Welcome to Take a Trip, an overview of transportation options, brought to you by Michigan Department of Education Low Incidence Outreach, MDE-LIO. Let's get started with introductions. I'm Amanda English. I'm a tall Caucasian female with shoulder-length brown hair. I have turquoise glasses and a black and white top on, and I also have a gray blazer on. I'm a teacher consultant for visually impaired, certified orientation and mobility specialist, and an education consultant for MDE-LIO. With me today is Margaret Winn. Please introduce yourself, Maggie.
Hi, I'm Maggie Winn. I'm also a female who is Caucasian with long blonde hair, and I'm wearing a black blouse today. I'm a certified orientation and mobility specialist for Oakland schools in the Metro Detroit area.
Thanks for joining me today, Maggie. All right, let's talk about our objectives. So our objectives today are to provide an overview of 10 transportation options, best practices or things to consider for each option, and to discuss some questions that you might want to consider. There's a picture on the screen. It has a person's hand inserting a Metro card into a kiosk. We're going to begin with some questions that you might want to consider as we progress through the presentation. The first question is, what transportation options do you currently use? The second, what transportation option would you like to use? And the last question, what transportation options are you uncertain about using? Our first option is an obvious one, the private vehicle. So private vehicles are most widely used transportation in most areas of the country. Even people who live in densely populated areas with more access to public transportation will still use a private vehicle at some point. Now, if you plan to ask for a ride from somebody, a family member or a friend, how might you estimate what the cost would be for the trip? I'm going to suggest using the federal reimbursement rate per mile. So this could be a really good indicator of what the cost might be. So if the federal rate is 58 cents per mile, you would take 0.58 and multiply it by the number of miles that you traveled. So for this scenario, let's say the person drives 10 miles. The reimbursement would be $5.80. If you're asking that friend to drive you somewhere, that might be an approximate amount that you could offer to reimburse them, because it can be really costly to travel via private vehicle. So it'd be a nice gesture to offer them an amount of money. You might ask yourself, well, how much does a person who drives a private vehicle have to pay for doing that? Well, let me tell you a few items that they typically need to cover. So the person might have to pay for insurance. They might pay for their registration and annual tags for their license plate, gasoline, maintenance, tolls on roads, parking fees, and that's all on top of what their vehicle costs. So right now, the average cost of a new car is climbing. So it was up to $38,723 as of September 2020, according to the Kelley Blue Book. That's up 2.5% from the same month in 2019. Now, having cash or a gift card handy is important. If someone doesn't want to accept that cash, you could do something else and offer to purchase coffee or lunch for them. So consider this. Are you only riding with the person one time? Or is this a consistent mode of transportation for you? This will change how and what you use for payment and how you'll show your gratitude. For help, for learning more about finding a ride, you can check out the resource Finding Wheels. It's a book by Korn and Rosenblum. It would be a good place to start. There's a picture on the screen. This one has a partial side view of a white car driving through a dark tunnel, and it has lights above it. Next, we're going to discuss rideshare. So rideshare is a way for a person to get a ride through a company that pays people who have registered to be drivers for their company. And they pick up the person who requests a ride through an app, and then they drive the person to the requested destination. So if you've seen a presentation on rideshare before, you know that Lyft and Uber are the most commonly used rideshare companies in Michigan, but there's definitely other options out there. So you'll want to download the appropriate app onto your smartphone, and then you'll need to link a debit or credit card to your account. This can even be a preloaded card, so you don't have to have a card that has your own name on it. You will need to know the addresses of your starting points and your destination. It will use your GPS from your phone to help locate you, but it's also nice to input the addresses so that you can make sure that they're correct. There will be times when you're standing at a different location and the driver will need to pinpoint where you are. And so they'll use the GPS to do that. For example, if you're standing at a large building on a corner, there may be multiple entrances. So they might not know exactly where you are unless you have your GPS on. Equally, you'll want to know information about the person and the vehicle that are picking you up. You'll have an option to be able to communicate with that driver via text through the app. Your costs for this will vary based on many factors, things like mileage, time of day, the demand. As you use rideshare more often, you'll be able to predict what your costs will be, and you can estimate a ride in the app based on these factors and the vehicle type. All right, I have two links on the screen. Both of these links will be available to you. And the first one is about Lyft's accessibility, and the second is Uber's accessibility. And these will take you to their websites where they'll show you the information that you might want to know. The picture on the screen shows a person with a white cane outside of a light colored car opening the back passenger side car door. All right, the next option is a taxi cab. This is a really nice option for transportation. It's typically a car that's owned by a taxi company, but some taxi companies have their employees use their own vehicles. You may have heard someone say, "I need to hail a cab," and that means to call it over or to alert the taxi driver that you want to ride. In most city locations that have taxi services, you would stand on the edge of the sidewalk, raise your hand, and put your hand forward and go, "Taxi!" Okay, so you might try that and see if you can get a cab to come over to you. If you're at a hotel or a restaurant, sometimes a bellhop or an attendant might be able to hail the cab for you. Or call the taxi service for you. So I personally like to use the yellowpages.com or do an online search to locate the cab company options. Once you have a cab number, you can save that in your phone so that you don't have to look them up every time. Most cab companies will provide on-demand services, but you can also schedule a cab for a pickup time. In some less populated or rural areas, it's important to schedule ahead to guarantee that there will be a cab available to pick you up. For example, an early ride to an airport or off-peak times, it'll be best to schedule those ahead of time. Payment for a taxi cab is made through using cash or a credit card, and it's often best just to tip in cash. Okay, so you'll check with your local cab company to ensure that they take the payment option that you prefer. It's important to give your pickup and drop-off addresses. So you'll need to let the cab company know also how many people are in your party or if you have luggage. And you'll want to keep your phone out and ready in case they try to call you to alert that they've arrived. You'll want to also identify yourself as having a vision impairment, and that'll make for an easier pickup. If you call the cab company rather than hailing the cab, you can ask the cab driver's name and the car number and style. All right, so there's a picture on our screen and it shows a yellow taxi cab and a person in a suit is getting out of the car. Next up, we're going to have Maggie talk with us about fixed route options. Take it away, Maggie.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. So what does fixed route service mean? Typically, this transportation will be provided by bus, light rail, or trolley. With this mode of transportation, there will be a driver on the vehicle with which you can interact and ask questions. Fixed route services will have predetermined timetables and designated stops on the route that the bus or trolley line is on. There are multiple ways to plan a route for fixed route services. These include using the transportation website, Google Maps, or calling the transportation center. Many times, calling the transportation center is the best option. You can talk to a customer service agent, and if you're new to using transit or if you're new to an area, you can ask them many questions and they might be able to ask you some questions to help determine the best option for you. Many regional transit authorities will also have an app for your smartphone available that will have real-time information for your bus or route. Typically, this is called Bus Tracker. For payment, your local transportation website or calling ahead will give you the information on how you can pay for your service. Typically, fare is paid upon boarding with either cash, token, or contactless cards. In larger metropolitan areas, preloaded cards that can also be used as credit or debit cards are now being used. So once you've scheduled your route, and you know that you're going to be taking that route, you want to think about some questions that you can ask the driver of the vehicle when you get on. So you must know your stop for when you're getting off the bus, but you can also ask the driver to remind you when you get to that location. When you enter the bus, you can ask the driver if the seat opposite him or her is open. That will ensure that they will remember that you're sitting near them whenever they look in their rearview mirror. If you use a guide dog for mobility, it will be best to sit behind the driver so other passengers can see your guide dog when they get on the bus, and that way there are no surprises. When it's time to get off the bus, you can ask the bus driver if the cross street is in front of the bus or behind the bus, and you can also confirm the correct cross streets. We have a picture on the screen of an orange fixed route bus moving quickly through the city. Next up, we're going to talk about paratransit services. Paratransit is a supplementary transportation option for persons with disabilities or older adults in the United States. Paratransit services operate within 3/4 of a mile of fixed route transportation options, and this is legally mandated. Paratransit services must be applied for, and you must qualify for these services. This process will include some form of application and possibly an interview. In some locations, you may need to demonstrate your independent travel skills as part of the interview. When filling out the application, make sure to remember that when you answer the form questions, you aren't just answering the questions assuming that you're familiar with the area or that it is during your ideal lighting condition or time of day. So if the form or an interviewer asks a question, if you can climb 3 stairs using a handrail, assume that this means in poor lighting conditions for you or possibly in a new or complex environment. Payment for paratransit services is typically done through an account that is set up and automatically debited, or vouchers can be used that are prepaid. So, what do you need to know and how do you plan paratransit services? Since this is a door-to-door service, you'll need to know the address for pickup and for your drop-off locations. Some things to consider about paratransit are that times are approximated through a pickup and drop-off window. So when scheduling, make sure you tell the operator if you need to arrive by a specific time so that they can adjust your pickup time. So for example, if you have a doctor's appointment at 11 a.m., they'll want to adjust the window to ensure that you are early rather than late. Paratransit runs from county line to county line. In major cities, you may have to change vehicles to transfer at more frequent points than a county change. The photo on the screen is a white passenger bus on a gray brick street in a downtown area. These buses typically can seat up to 9 people, and they're equipped with accessibility features in mind. Now we're going to talk about college shuttle services. College shuttles will usually be fixed route services with stops throughout a college or university campus. Depending upon the university, there may also be door-to-door options. You will need to inquire with your specific college or university about what is available. College shuttles may be free or they're paid through your tuition. This fixed route service will have a driver who will be able to tell you when you've reached your stop, but it will also be your responsibility to spatially update and learn the route. Similar to a city bus, you'll have the ability to ask clarifying questions to know where your intersections are in relation to the shuttle as you exit the vehicle. All right, next is light rail systems. A light rail system is considered fixed route transportation. Light rail might have one line or may have multiple lines that intersect in a city or metropolitan area. When there are multiple lines, they usually are denoted by color or number. Light rails may travel to places including a downtown, airport, some type of city center, and into some popular neighborhoods. That being said, you'll find light rail systems in places like Detroit, Salt Lake City, Los Angeles. There are approximately 40 different light rail systems throughout the United States. The largest ridership in the US is in Los Angeles on their system. A light rail system is going to have a lower passenger capacity than a metro system or an Amtrak train. Typically, light rail runs at a lower speed or similar to that of the vehicles that are at street level. Light rail systems normally will need to follow all traffic lights when they're running at street level. Light rail is usually at street level, but it may go above or below ground for small distances. For paying for light rail, ticketing systems are going to vary from system to system, city to city. There may be an electronic option in place where you would purchase the ticket. This could be on the platform or at a station before entering the train car, or a person may come around to check your ticket if you're not required to scan or insert it at a kiosk upon entry. In some locations, you can buy your ticket from an attendant, but this is becoming less and less frequent. On the screen, we have a light rail train traveling along a light rail track in a city. Next is subway or elevated lines. We've grouped subway systems and elevated lines, or the L, together since they run very similarly, except one, the subway, runs 2 levels below street level, and the L typically is running 2 levels above the street level. That being said, the station is going to be 1 level above street level or below. That way the spaces can be stacked and will not take away from the densely populated areas or buildings that already exist in those spaces. A subway or L system is going to have a central location, and then it's going to disperse out to less populated areas. For example, in Chicago, the common term for downtown is called the Loop, but this refers to the area where the elevated lines loop through downtown, and you can easily transfer to subway service in those areas. When planning routes, route planning can be done through Google Maps, the regional transportation website, or by calling the transportation center. System maps can be found online or at the train station. Typically, they're color-coded or numerical or by letter. Additionally, many of these train lines will also have a train tracker. So if you have the app from the transportation company, you may be also able to track your train like you can a bus. Some things to consider is that each train station will typically have an attendant available. The train station will have a call button if the attendant is not at their central location. You can request that the attendant have someone meet you at your destination station, if it's not a station that you're familiar with. Doors may or may not open in a designated spot, so be sure to be paying attention to cues like sound change or a ding as the door opens or closes. Some trains may say, doors closing. Another thing to consider is that maintaining orientation may be more difficult as you go up or down flights of stairs and you need to make turns. Once you have entered the train, it is important to note that accessible seating is usually in a designated location to the left or the right of the door. For payment for subway or elevated lines, the fare card will likely be the same for your fixed route system unless you transfer to a suburban system. Typically, you would either scan your card and then enter the station through a turnstile or need to push a button to enter through an accessible gate. We have a picture on the screen that shows a blue subway train parked at a station, and the doors are open and people are exiting the doors.
Thank you so much, Maggie. All right, let's move on to passenger trains. Planning for a trip on a passenger train may seem a bit of a challenge, but it's not much different than planning for a bus trip. To get started, you'll contact the train station either in person, on the phone, or over the internet. You can find out the times that the train will pick up at your particular station and the direction it's heading. So typically a train is named so you'll know which line and often which direction it travels. As with fixed route buses, the train typically travels at specific times during the day. For most trains, the times will be a wider range of time between pickups. For example, there might be a train heading west in the morning at 11 o'clock, and that train might not return until 4 or 5 in the afternoon. There also may be more than one train that travels the route, one that travels east and another that travels west. You'll likely pay with a credit card or debit card for the passenger train trip, and you'll pay prior to getting on the train. So once you're at the train station, you'll go to the ticket booth and get your ticket, or you can order it online ahead of time. Then once you're on the train and settled in your seat, the conductor will ask for your ticket and confirm where you're planning to disembark. You'll want to listen for the announcements that are given over the train speakers to hear the location and the train that the train is approaching. So you'll hear that over the loudspeakers. Be sure to gather all of your belongings when it's time to exit. Keep in mind where you're entering the train is likely also the same as where you'll exit the train. You can ask the conductor when he or she checks your ticket if they can point you to the nearest exit. The train does not typically stay very long, so you'll only have a couple of minutes to enter and exit the train. Once you exit the train, you'll want to navigate to the attached train station or off of a platform. So be aware of your surroundings and use your mobility device, as there are often tracks and occasionally drop-offs that you'll want to avoid. Most train stations have a building, but some will only have the platform. So be sure you know where you're going once you disembark. Amtrak's top competitors include Canadian National Railway, Norfolk Southern, Valley Transportation Authority, Arriva, Genesee and Wyoming, and Kansas City Southern. But in Michigan, Amtrak is the one that is most prevalent. Now we have a picture description, and this one is of a fast-moving passenger train on the tracks in a well-lit train station. Okay, we've reached our final mode of transportation, and this one is the airplane. So passenger trains may be fun, but they can often take a bit longer to get to your destination. So when you want to travel a great distance quickly, the speediest method might be to take an airplane. This may take the most planning, but truly it isn't too much more challenging than taking a train. You'll begin by finding which flight you want to take. Tickets can be purchased online, either through a travel company, a discount website, or directly from the airline. You'll need to know which airport you're leaving from and which airport you're traveling to. In Michigan, there are several airports, but Detroit is our largest airport. Costs will vary if you choose to fly from one of the smaller airports, but they're usually a little bit easier to navigate. So once you've scheduled your flight, you'll arrive about 2 hours earlier than your flight to the airport. You'll check in at the ticket and baggage counter, and the attendant will help with printing your tickets. You may check in and choose to have the tickets digitally on your phone as well. The Americans with Disabilities Act services will be available at each airline. You can request ADA services when you're booking your ticket. They may offer you a wheelchair when your ticket is flagged. You can refuse this and ask to be guided human guide to have your guide dog follow or visually track the agent or some other method. They may offer you a golf cart for longer distances throughout the airport. This is helpful for finding gates quickly and are especially helpful when there is a change in your gate. So be sure to check in with the gate attendant to ensure that your plane is still coming to the named gate and to find out if there are any delays. So the picture shows an airplane flying through a blue sky with its landing gear down, and it says WestJet on it. And now that you know something about various types of public transportation, I want you to think about which one you would choose and why. You would contact an O&M specialist to learn new modes of transportation that are new to you, or if you move to a location and need orientation to a new system, this would be another good time to reach out to your orientation and mobility specialist. All right, thank you so much for joining us to look at ways that you might use transportation on Take a Trip. If you have questions regarding today's presentation, you can contact myself, Amanda English, at Michigan Department of Education Low Incidence Outreach, or MDELIO, through email at englisha1@michigan.gov, or you can contact Maggie Winn at Margaret, MARGARET, .winn, WINN, at oakland.k12.mi.us. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you.